practice of sharing knowledge about illegal activities only on a need-to-know basis. And so essentially, don't talk about your involvement or anyone else's involvement in illegal activities, someone else's desire to be involved in illegal activities, asking people about their desire to be involved in illegal activities, yours or anyone else's future plans for potential illegal activities. That said, we need to be involved in activities that are illegal to be able to create the world we want to do. So do what needs to be done, but do it smart, do it safe, and be really wary of macho posturing, youthful exuberance, all things that I myself have perpetuated. And so this is where accountability is really important, to hold each other accountable and not let that sort of thing be socially acceptable or socially validated. Oftentimes informants take our most when you go look at cases of recent political repression, oftentimes the things that informants are saying are not like the secret plan by any means. It is where people were kind of joking or posturing and that sort of stuff, and it's those little isolated segments that are taken out of context that are then put into some sort of terrorist indictment or some bullshit like that. And so I think a really important about security culture is that it's not just don't say things, but also really validating the sort of work that makes our movements possible, that builds our capacity. So, for example, the care work and emotional labor that goes into just being able to continue in resistance work is just as important as, taking your battery out of your cell phone when you're in some sort of secret meeting or some sort of thing like that. There are plenty of security culture zines. There's some up here that we have borrowed from the Dirty Hands Collective. And so in the interest of time, I'm not going to go super deep into this because I don't think that it's like the silver bullet that will help our movements. But that said, it's worth studying histories of informants. There's a pretty good profile of informants over here. And it's also really worth pointing out, this zine, Why Misogynists Make Great Informants, that oftentimes the social behavior, whether it's patriarchal, racist, just bullshit posturing that we're trying to replace and find something different for, oftentimes those are actually our most vulnerable traits and characteristics when it comes to informants causing problems and havoc within our movements.
One thing to sort of piggyback off that is that you shouldn't find yourself in a position where you are trying to convince somebody else, or somebody else is trying to convince you to participate in something illegal. Maybe you've got your collective and you're like, hey guys, do you want to maybe work on this blockade or go do this graffiti thing? And if somebody's like, no, I'm not comfortable with that, why are you having to convince them, and is that a good idea? On the flip side is why is somebody trying to convince you after you've said, no, I'm not comfortable with that? It could be because they're an informant, but it could also just be because, they're really exuberant and excited about this thing. It doesn't really matter why they're doing it, but the fact that they are doing it, that somebody has to be convinced to doing something that they've expressed that they don't really want to do or that they're not comfortable with is really problematic. And we get sometimes caught up in this macho posturing where oh, I thought you were committed. Or oh, there's all this terrible stuff going on in the world and you won't even do this one little thing that's a little bit illegal. I thought you were down. And that's, we got to get away from that sort of macho attitude and be able to plan stuff with people that are already on the same page as us. We shouldn't have to be dragging people. Number 4, they'll be really brief about skepticism about rumors, conjecture, provocation. Sometimes we get caught up in this idea that we got to find who the snitch is. We got to find who the infiltrator is. These witch hunts can be incredibly destructive. And so being careful about speculating about people's motivations. If somebody's doing something that's problematic, let's say, like I said, they're trying to convince you to do something that you don't want to do. Does it matter that much if they're doing it because they're an informant or whether it's just because, they are, macho and manipulative and not a good person? Sometimes people make mistakes. We got to be yo, this thing that you're doing is not okay. Here's why. Deal with it in a constructive way without speculating about people's motivations. If they keep doing it after you've addressed it with them, then maybe that's somebody that you just shouldn't be organizing with. Obviously, if you have actual information that somebody's an informant, that's sort of a whole different story. But there's sometimes a tendency to like go around and be like, oh, so-and-so was doing this really sketchy thing that made me uncomfortable. They were lying about these things. I bet they're a snitch. And then suddenly there's this rumor that this person's a snitch, and really, they're kind of misguided, or they kind of screwed up, or they're, young, or they didn't realize something, and it's maybe something that could have been like addressed and dealt with, but now everybody thinks that they're a snitch, and so they've been isolated. And I've seen that happen where, people that were doing things that were sort of problematic but not being dealt with in a productive way got what's called snitch jacketing, where they get made to look like a snitch when they're really not. They're just sort of doing some things that are problematic. And so being really careful about spreading rumors. Don't spread rumors. Don't encourage other people to spread rumors. Work on verifying stuff. And so I'll give it back to Will for number 5.
So that leads really into solid communication and bonds of trust. Working out problems face to face and having the experience and forms of communication that will allow you to work through difficult things. And when we think about something like the Jay Ferguson example and the kind of the cascading indictments that happen after that, there might have been strong communication, but amongst the interpersonal conflicts that are bound to come up in this sort of thing, if you don't have that strong communication, that sort of honesty, that sort of familiarity with each other, that can lead to problems down the line. So there's a good quote that James brought up: to live outside the law, you must be honest. And I think that is really important when we're thinking about what we're doing within our movements and that sort of thing. And so there's nothing highly technical about this. This is just basic personal skills, but really having that preliminary work will help you when the shit gets real. So those are all the S's, and the last O is organize, for liberation and against oppression. Like we talked about earlier, the best antidote for repression is more resistance, but that's not just a escalation of tactics and militancy, but really thinking about our strategies and how we're growing our movements' depth and breadth and capacity. So I think we'll probably end there.
Yeah, and give us the wrap-up sign.
Do questions or anything like that?
Yeah, I got a question. This kind of brings together a lot of points like non-cooperation and supporting one another and not spreading rumors. Are y'all aware of any case where somebody has been outed as a cooperating defendant where that's not been true and it's just been a lie on behalf of the state? Like, do they always tell us the truth when they're like, this person's cooperating? Should we always take their word for it?
Usually, if they're cooperating in a court case, there's usually ways to find that out through the legal process, through the court case. If there's a trial, their evidence has to be given at trial, so they got to testify. There might be stuff in discovery